So it's 4:00 and I will call to order this special meeting of the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners. We have just one item on our agenda that we wanted to get to that and not have it have to wait until our next regular meeting. So, and we also have a new member to introduce. So welcome, Jim Whitlatch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Jim is, of course, well, no one can replace Les Coyne, but stepping into the role that Les had. So, so I think now that we have Israel here as well, Kim, can you, could you do the roll call for us?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Kathleen Mills.
Here.
Israel Herrera.
Here.
Ellen Rodkey.
Here.
James Whitlatch.
Here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So we have, we voted previously on the removal of some trees out at, let me just pull this up so I don't get any of these details wrong. Cascades Creek, and for the Cascades Creek Stabilization Project, and we previously voted on that. After the placards went up about some trees that would be removed, then we did have an appeal, and that comes from Miss Susan, is it Glowitz? I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. And is Susan here? Would she, I assume, just to check to see if she's here before we proceed.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, and you did pronounce it correctly, and thank you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, so let's see. I don't know that, I mean, I have not been on the board during a previous appeal to tree removal, so I don't know if there is a particular order to whether we can hear from Susan first or Aaron Hatch or the Tree Commission. So I think I'll just, Susan, since you're here, if you want to maybe just kick things off with telling us a little bit of your, you know, what it is that you wanted to let us know about the removal of these trees and what concerns you have.
Surely, and thank you so much. I'm very appreciative of you fitting this into your day and scheduling last moment, and special thanks to Aaron Hatch. I've learned a lot through her about this process, and you folks have a lot of wonderful teams supporting you. So I wanted to share that feedback. I sense I'm coming late to the conversation because I noticed the signs on the 31st of January, and I've communicated with a variety of individuals, some on the Tree Commission, Aaron, and a host of others about the proposed project. So I've been bringing myself up to speed on it. Little background about myself. I'm a resident of Fritz Terrace. I often visit the Lower Cascades area, taking advantage of the wonderful nature there and finding solace. And I've owned my home in the area for about 5 years, and it's one of my favorite locations in Bloomington. And there's two questions that I have for you, and I don't expect an answer today. And then one point that I'd like to share with you. And my first question is it possible to slow the project down to extend the timeline? I'm hoping that we could better disseminate information about the project to the community around Lower Cascades, and possibly look at what other alternatives there might be. Again, acknowledging I've come late to the conversation and some of this work likely may have been done. My second question is, and again, Aaron was very helpful in helping me understand that there is a desire to widen the bank in order to slow the flow of the water to decrease the erosion of the bank, which makes sense. I'm curious if it's possible to widen the bank in the eastern rather than the western direction, as the western direction has the mature trees that I'm concerned about. The eastern direction has trees as well, but they are younger or a different variety, so they're smaller, and many of them have roots that are jutting out and over the water, and some look like they're going to topple over as well. So I'm curious if that's a possibility. I've also learned that Old State Road 37, which borders the eastern bank, may be converted to a non-traffic road. So using, it can be used for pedestrians and bicyclists, et cetera, but not for vehicular traffic. And I know that's still in conversation. There hasn't been a decision made about that. But if that is something that will be an eventuality, then perhaps there is some flexibility to widen the bank in the eastern direction, which could result in perhaps less of the 23 trees that are designated for removal. So that's my second and final question. And then my third is, it's a theme of loss. There's been a lot of loss during the pandemic, and many of you on this call and many in the community have experienced it in some form, whether it be a loss of job, loss of a relative, loss of a friend, loss of livelihood. There's so many things that contribute to that theme as related to the pandemic. And I was thinking about this in regards to those trees, and I was talking to community members and neighbors, and many people I've encountered don't know about this. And I'm picturing going there in the spring after they've been removed as the project designates for them to be so now, and then having this whole area appear so different and so many wonderful mature trees being gone that add to the aesthetic quality, really provide a sense of solace for those of us who've been going there quite a bit in 2020, and the handful of us that go there with the weather now in 2021. And not to mention the habitat that will be lost for animals that, and insects and bats that use it now. So I'm just kind of concerned about the community psyche, if you will, in particular as related to the pandemic, of having that area altered as much as it is. And again, I do want to point out that I am very hopeful when I read about the 5-to-1 replacement ratio of trees, and that there are about 115 trees that will be replanted if these 23 trees are removed. And I support that, and I think that's a fantastic measure. The thing about it, I see that many people in the community don't know that those trees that will be replacing those that will be removed aren't necessarily going to be planted at that site. And the ones that are planted, it will take quite a long time for them to mature. And most of us won't be here to see that. It won't occur in our lifetime. It won't occur in our progeny's lifetime. And it certainly won't occur in the lifetime of the animals and the insects and the bats that use the habitat. And that's pretty much what I wanted to bring forward to you. The two questions: can we slow the project down? Can we extend the timeline? Can we look at widening that bank of the creek in the eastern direction rather than the western direction? And then, this theme of loss and being concerned, again, not just for me, but other folks that I know in the community who use that area that have no idea this is coming. And just thank you for being willing to hear my thoughts.
All right. Thank you very much. So I think maybe the next logical place to move would be over to Erin Hatch, since she submitted the original information to us. So Erin, do you want to address some of those questions?
Yes. So I will basically read from my staff report that was submitted. And most of this information I think I've already sent along to Susan as well. But basically the project is geared towards addressing major stream bank erosion issues along Cascades Creek, including erosion that is undercutting root systems of many of the existing trees. And in order to address these erosion issues, the project would widen that western edge of the creek. I don't believe we really looked at the eastern edge as an option, just because you would be cutting into the road. And this project actually has undergone modifications specifically to preserve as many trees as possible, with a certain section in the north being modified to be a narrower redesign in order to preserve most of the mature sycamores that currently exist there, which actually drastically reduced the slated tree removals down to the current 23 total. And as mentioned, there is a mitigation planting as part of this project with a 5-to-1 mitigation ratio. I will say that this project is being regulated by the Indiana bat restrictions that come in place with certain tree removals. So there is a timeline that we're allowed to remove trees as part of this project, which would be between September and April 1st. So there is a need to conduct this project within that timeline. So if the trees are not able to be removed by April 1st this year, they would actually have to be removed the following year in order to meet DNR requirements regarding Indiana bat habitat. So that's a consideration as well. The trees slated to be replaced are a very diverse mix of native species. And I think, unfortunately, a thing with managing forests is trees are planted, but trees also are removed, and it's that constant kind of flow of life there. So I would say that I'm recommending denial of the appeal to continue the project as planned to allow for these removals to occur and address the major stream bank erosion issues that are occurring along the Cascades Creek.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Erin. Next we have, let's see, Tim, do you want to, I know you're there as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I can speak for a second.
Okay.
First, thank you, board, for coming together today. And I just want to say thank you to Susan, too, for your genuine and collegial concern throughout the process, and your patience with us as we do our first tree appeal in 8 years, and what has been a new process for some of us, including myself. I've been with the department for about a month. So thank you, Susan, for that. Just wanted to speak to a couple of factors that went into the design of this project, though I have picked this up, in the last month or so from my predecessor. Eagle Ridge Consulting Engineering has been the one driving the design process. They created some of the docs that have been seen before, and I just want to touch on a couple points that came up in the design process, just to, remind you, board, maybe of some of what you've seen. Jim, you haven't seen some of this before. And Susan, hopefully to reassure you about the consideration that's gone into this project. With this project, there were really 4 main factors to weigh. Number 1 is erosion. I am going to share something here. So this is just an approximation of the water that flows into Cascades. I didn't get super technical with placing the line exactly at the right point, but this is an elevation map that shows you the elevations. And you can see it kind of follows ridges around the east side of the IU stadiums, pretty much all the way down to 11th Street, and then west over towards Tri-North, and then kind of coming back up to Cascades. So this is the entire area where, when rain falls, flows into the Cascades. And, we have to imagine when Cascades was built 100 years ago, and they built these walls, there was a whole lot less permeable surface in this area. And even in the last 10 years, if we think about what's happened around 11th Street, what's happening right now at the old Motel 6 site, why Miller Showers was updated to try to be stormwater control. There's more and more stormwater flowing into Cascades because of more and more non-permeable surfaces that have been constructed. As that stormwater has flowed into that creek, which, I think we have to remember, stop sharing here, is not in its natural state. It was built into a chute many, many years ago. The water has nowhere to go. It funnels, it increases sedimentation downstream, and degrades the quality of the watershed, both there and downstream in the Bean Blossom watershed, all the way out to the lower White Fork watershed. All of those are reasons factored into that erosion part of it. And if you've been by Cascades, I know you can't drive by right now, but Susan, like you, I'm one of those people that does go out there in the winter. You can see some very serious effects where the wall has washed away, that undercut, trees, et cetera, blocks have been moved. And so another consideration is really safety, trying to make the park a safer place, in addition to affecting that erosion. Also, sheer 6-7 foot walls that drop down to a very shallow amount of water and rocks is not necessarily the safest option for families recreating on the far bank side. So safety is certainly another factor. Another factor absolutely has been trying to preserve the big mature trees. I am not a fan that we have to take out some trees to do this. And actually in the design phase, farther north, the northern basically third of the project, which is closer to the Sycamore shelter and the playground, was actually redesigned in the design phase to save a lot of those mature trees there with a really high canopy and to preserve the feeling of that park. Originally, it called for a wider wall that would have had about a 15-foot horizontal impact from the creek bank. It was redesigned so it only has about a 4-foot impact, and all of the work in that section is going to be done from the stream bed, specifically because the desire is to protect the big mature trees. And the other factor really is access. As a recreation space, in terms of inclusivity, which is one of our goals and things like that. The walls don't make for a very accessible experience, and so by building out the walls closer to the waterfall shelter, where the horizontal impact is the greatest from the construction, we're going to alleviate safety concerns. That's where the worst erosion is because of the bend in the creek right there, which does tend to happen on the outside wall as well further. And we're going to increase access by being able to have this accessible path much closer to the creek's edge. So all of those factors have been weighed in with the tree removals. Susan, I wanted to speak. I know in one of your emails you mentioned as well, the boardwalk up to the waterfall, that will not affect any trees. That has been designed specifically to be flexible, to work around trees on the way up to the Cascades waterfall. And let me see, what other questions did you have? Aaron kind of touched on the slowing down. Some of the trees being not placed at the site. The replanting plan, which Susan, I believe you were provided with from Aaron as well, plants as many trees right there as possible, but due to the 5-to-1 ratio, some of them are going to an alternate farther north site. Still in the general area, but you're right, not right in that. That's because we couldn't plant 5-to-1 trees right in that area and still maintain, healthy ecosystem in the long term. We can't really expand eastern. I think Aaron touched on that. And the feeling of loss, I completely understand. But I just want to reassure the board and Susan, you, that this has been considered and weighed, and always, the longevity and the specialness of these big trees is certainly in our heart when we look at these design decisions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
And then let's see, Laurel Cornell on behalf of the Tree Commission. Is Laurel? Yeah.
I am here.
Okay.
Do I get to see myself or not?
Sure. Go for it. I think if you have that, you can change up your video. There we go. Okay.
Great. Thanks. Okay. I'm Laurel Cornell. I'm chair of the Tree Commission for the city of Bloomington. And I particularly wanted to address Susan's questions about public input. First thing, I am really glad that you recognize the placard and you replied to it. We haven't had placards for tree removals. We've only had them for 5 or 8 years or something. So we're always really glad when the public sees them and responds to them and does something like ask for a change to our plans. Second thing is I'd like to invite you to the Tree Commission meetings. They are open to the public. They take place on the 3rd Wednesday of the month from 9:30 to 11, now by Zoom. And we always welcome members of the public to talk about the various tree projects. So what is the Tree Commission? The Tree Commission is a group of people who are appointed by the city, by the mayor's office, by Public Works, by parks, and so on, to work with the urban forester, who's now Aaron Hatch, to think about how best to preserve and protect and plant trees in the city of Bloomington. One of the things we do is that we review all of the city's plans for public works projects of this sort. So every plan that involves tree management of some sort goes through the Tree Commission. And we talk about it a great deal. I know at our last meeting, which was on yesterday, we talked about one multi-use path where 4 trees had to be removed, and they were really nice trees, and we hated it. And we thought, well, can we take them up and move them someplace else? But they're large enough that you need an 80-inch tree spade. And There isn't an 88-inch tree spade in the city's availability to use. And besides, if you use the 80-inch tree spade, you would reach down into the gas line that's underneath. So finally we said, well, it's really unfortunate that we can't do anything about these 4 trees. I think in the case of this Cascades project, there are 2 parts of it. One is that it is unfortunate that trees have to be removed. But on the other hand, it is an excellent project. It's unfortunate because we do need to control erosion in this park. And as you look at the photographs, what you see is that some of the trees you are talking about are about to fall into the creek because they have been eroded so much. So we need to do the erosion control. In terms of being an excellent project, I think the initial plan was to remove 50 or 60 trees, some fairly large number like that. Aaron knows the exact number, I believe. We suggested some modification. We as a tree commission did suggest some modifications to the plan so that fewer trees could be removed. So that at the northern part of the plan, you'll see that there's a very, very narrow area there where there's a very steep edge to the creek bank, to the erosion control. And that is deliberately very narrow in order to allow many trees to remain. And again, the little observatory place is really a byproduct of this erosion control project. It's not the central focus of it. So often we have this kind of conflict. You know, there's something that really, really needs to be done. And unfortunately, some trees need to be removed for that project to take place. So we always try to do our best and to balance things. And I think in this case, we ended up with an excellent design that really does a wonderful job of preserving as many trees as possible. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. All right, do we have any questions from other board members for Laurel or Tim or Aaron, or any things that weren't addressed there that you wanted to ask about?
I've got a couple questions.
Okay.
Sorry to start out that way. Just a question, the trees that are being removed, are the 23, are these mostly or entirely native trees or some not native trees? Can you kind of give me a little guess of what those trees are? And Aaron or whomever can best answer that.
Hi, James. I can answer that. There's a pretty good mix of different species. The largest, most mature trees are some black walnuts, some tulips. There are a few sycamores. So it is a mix, and I believe some of the smaller ones might be some volunteer non-natives. So it is a mix there. There's also a mix in terms of sizing as well. There are large mature trees, but there also are smaller trees that are, say, under 10 inch. So it kind of spans the gamut in terms of size and species. Yeah. Okay.
One other question is, there's some trees that, at least on the photos, it mentions, and I'm not sure whose photos they were, but they're further back from the bank. There's a pine tree or that type of tree, and some other ones that are, the pictures I saw talk about them being 14 feet or so back. Can you let me know why those trees are being removed and what that means?
Yeah, so if you look at the design of the project, there's kind of 3 main design sections. To the north is the narrow section that we've referenced. In the middle is, I guess, what would be the standard section that does tier out. And the southern section is actually the widest section that has a recreational area. So I believe as you get closer to that pine that you're referencing, that kind of starts the transition between the kind of standard section and the widest recreational section. When we walked through this with the contractor to specifically look at tree retention, condition of trees was also evaluated, with the location of that pine being both on, I believe it's like a drainage pipe, and I don't know. Yeah, can you go to the map at the beginning, Tim? There's a drainage pipe, but also the condition of that tree was starting to show some signs of stress. So there was also a balancing there where if the tree is retained and we're doing all of this associated construction work and potential increased stress, specifically considering the root systems and how far they expand, would the tree be able to survive? And if it's retained, there's a potential that it can stand, but it will actually turn into a liability or potential hazard in the long run, especially if any roots are damaged either via compaction of equipment or actual removal of roots. With most of the trees, because of the design, having at least removal of some roots, if not fully being in the project itself. So that was a consideration as well, is the stability and health long-term of that tree and the tree's ability to become a threat to our park users.
Thank you. That's helpful. And one last question from me, I believe. The mitigation trees that you have, I understand they're all native trees. What size are those trees when they come in?
Those will all be basically the standard planting size here, which will be a 2 to 2.5 inch ball and burlap tree. So not small saplings. These will be pretty decently sized tree. The actual height will vary depending on the species, but I would say anywhere from 4 to kind of 6 feet in height. Just again, depending, usually we measure by the actual diameter or caliper of the tree.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. And I do want to say that, Susan, I do appreciate your presentation and the bringing this before us, and deserves consideration, and I appreciate your presentation. But that's all the questions I have.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Yes, you addressed some of my questions as well, which is good. And let's see, any other board members have questions for Aaron or for Tim?
I don't know if this was in the information. I didn't see it, but if there was a sense of, I know we have 115 that are being planted as mitigation, but are there, like, how many mature trees are we still preserving? Is that, like, is there, I mean, of the number of mature trees that currently exist along that project, is there a sense of how many we're removing as to how many we're preserving?
I can speak to the initial project design then to where we are now. I would say it's about an equal number, 20 or so of the trees in the north are being retained, at least of mature trees, but that's not counting, say, smaller trees or anything like that. So I don't have a specific count, but at least from the initial design, I would say 20 or so.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good to know too, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it seems like there was a real, and I do remember this presentation that we reviewed, and it was, I think we probably asked some questions about tree removal then, but just got a real good understanding of the need for the erosion and some of the things that Tim spoke about with the water levels. I think climate change probably has had a lot to do with that over the last many years. So yeah, I have a good understanding of that. And Susan, I also want to just say thank you for bringing this up. I mean, I agree. It is tough to lose a tree, any tree. I mean, it's years before they reach that level of maturity. And so it is tough. But yeah, and I know this has been a year of loss. But I hope that maybe, if we, even if we move forward with the plan as is, I hope that, there will be some really lovely memories that can be made with new trees and kind of honoring that. But thank you so much for participating in this process and bringing this issue up and asking the questions. I think that we all benefit from that participation.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ellen. And Israel, do you have any questions or comments?
Right. Yeah, I agree with Ellen regarding the how difficult it is to remove, trees in general, and I really appreciate Susan letting us know about your concerns and the importance of like conserving trees, but also I see the side of preserving our parks and protection of the site, and finding ways to how to compensate the loss of a tree. So really, thank you for bringing this information to the board and the interest for preserving and conserving our trees in Bloomington.
Okay. Yeah, and I would just echo what others have said. I mean, I appreciate Susan giving us a chance to take a second look at this. We often have, upwards of 20 items on our agenda for a meeting. And while we do, look through all of them, it never hurts to take a second look at something. And I do also, I mean, I understand the loss of the trees. When I first came on the board, Lee Huss, Aaron's predecessor, would come to our meetings, real in-person meetings, and recommend that some trees had to be removed. Emerald ash borer was always he was always fighting that, and some of the trees I knew the locations, I'd be like, that tree looks fine. And then Lee would sort of give you this overview of how things were structurally really not working there. And so it is difficult. And I totally appreciate the idea that, it's going to be the next generation of park goers that are going to enjoy these as mature trees. So, yeah, I appreciate all the details too from Aaron and from Tim. I've seen some of the erosion out there. Not recently. I haven't been out there in the colder weather, but yeah, that is definitely a changing stream bank there over the years. So, with that, I think we will see if we have any. Kim, do we have any other public comment on this issue?
No, we do not have any other public with us right now.
Okay.
Unless Paula has an email. Do you have
Okay.
anything else, Paula?
See if Paula has anything in email.
No comments in email.
Okay. All right. Thank you for checking. Yeah, so I will then, this is stated as an appeal of the proposed tree removals. So I'll call for a motion on this appeal.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
So what? Let me see what a yes or a no means in the motion, like, because we have a recommendation from the park office. So how would you present the language, Kathleen?
I think if the motion is presented as denying the appeal, I suppose then a yes vote would be that you deny the appeal and you go ahead with the tree removal, and then a no vote would be that you want to sustain the appeal and I suppose maybe push the timetable off a little bit or something like that. Okay, so the motion that makes sense.
Right, the motion would be motion to deny the appeal, and then okay.
Yeah. So okay. All right. So Ellen or Jim, if you want to go ahead.
I'll make a motion, or was that a motion, or was?
I think we need a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the appeal on the removal of trees that has been brought be denied, and base that denial upon the recommendations of the various people that spoke this evening, as well as the 5-to-1 mitigation, and in the best interest of the city and the project, I would move that we deny the appeal.
Okay, and do we have a second for that motion?
I will second it.
Okay, all right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I think we have a unanimous vote on that. So again, we'll proceed with what was suggested there by the department for the project. And again, thank you, Susan, for being such an attentive park user and bringing this to us. And we all, as we've said, we all really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
All right, I was waiting to get unmuted. Thank you, everyone. I have a better understanding of what this is about, and I really appreciate, I believe it was Tim who had talked about being in that area, because I'm aware you have so many projects coming in, and these aren't the only trees in town. You may not necessarily have the capability or time to get there to see what we're talking about. So I do feel immensely better that Tim and perhaps others have been there and know what I'm talking about. And I think it was maybe Ellen who said, make memories but new trees. And I love that. So offer that. And this was my first tree appeal as well. So and I thought it was smooth and it went really well. So bravo for that. But thank you for having this process. And I'll be happy to check out what the tree commission is doing and check out the park commission's meetings too. I'm really appreciative by how much care and concern there is about the environment here. So again, thank you for entertaining this, for the thorough discussion, and for your caring and what you do. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Susan. Paula, back over to you. Do you have anything else to add before we adjourn?
No, just thank you, everyone. And Susan, again, thank you for participating in the process, and for board members for making the time to hear it, and the staff, and Laurel, and the work that the Tree Commission does. Trees are near and dear to us, and it's a little unusual to have an urban forester in a department this size, but Bloomington values our trees and takes care. And someone said it today, we focus a lot on tree planting, but on the back end, there are projects and times that come for tree removals, and those are always hard discussions, but one that we are dedicated and focused on when we plan these projects. And looking forward, and I'll just say I've managed enough projects to know that every project gets a little ugly in the beginning as you're starting it out, but we're really excited about this project and what the end product will be. And the what I foresee is the increased recreation and engagement opportunities for people when they visit our oldest park. And we will be giving a nod to the history of this park by preserving those limestone tables. And we do have the original limestone entry columns that were in place back when that was the main entry into Bloomington. So there will be a celebration to embrace the history of that park, but also preparing it for the future generations that will enjoy that space as well. So thank you, everyone.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Everyone be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. We're adjourned. Thanks very much.